My name is Samuel. I am 95 years old. The house is very quiet now. Sometimes the floorboards creak, and for a split second, I think it is her coming down the hallway. But then I remember, I've lived through almost a century of history, through wars and inventions that changed the world. But as I sit here in the twilight of my life, I don't think about the world. I think about the woman I shared a bed with for 68 years. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. People tell me I was a lucky man. They see the photos of us at our golden anniversary and say, "Samuel, you two had the perfect life." We never divorced. We rarely shouted. We raised 3 children who are all successful and kind. But there is a secret weight I carry in my chest, a realization that only arrived when she was gone, and I was left with nothing but the echoes of our past. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I met Eleanor in 1948. She was wearing a simple blue dress, and she had a laugh that sounded like a song you couldn't quite get out of your head. I was a young man back from the service, eager to build a life, to be a provider, to be the man of the house. I fell in love with her because she was steady. She was supportive. She was the wind beneath my wings while I climbed the corporate ladder. I thought that was what a good marriage was. I thought my job was to lead, and her job was to follow. I didn't realize that in my hurry to lead, I never stopped to ask where she actually wanted to go. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. After she passed away last year, I had to do the hard work of going through her things. In the back of her closet, under a pile of old winter coats, I found a leather portfolio. It was full of sketches, incredible, vibrant charcoal and ink drawings of people in the park, of the city skyline, of the ocean. I stared at them for hours. I had known Eleanor liked to doodle now and then, but these weren't doodles. These were the works of an artist. I found a brochure for an art institute in the city, dated 1952. It was folded and refolded so many times the paper was soft like silk. She had never mentioned it, not once in 68 years. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I realized that in 1952, I was working 12-hour days trying to get a promotion. We had a toddler and another baby on the way. Eleanor never told me she wanted to go to art school because she knew we couldn't afford it, and more importantly, she knew I expected her to be home. She buried her dream so deep that even I, the man who claimed to love her most, couldn't see it. My regret isn't that we were poor, it's that I never created a space where she felt she could tell me she wanted something for herself. I was the sun in our universe, and she was just a planet reflecting my light. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I think back to all the times I asked her, "How was your day, Ellie?" And she would simply say, "It was fine, Sam." I took that at face value. I thought fine meant happy. I thought fine meant satisfied. Now, at 95, I realize that fine was a mask. It was the word she used to protect me from her boredom, from her unfulfilled potential, from the parts of her soul that were starving for something more than laundry and PTA meetings. I regret that I was so caught up in my own important work that I never learned to listen to the silence behind her words. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I look at our wedding photos now, and I see a stranger. I see a 20-year-old girl with fire in her eyes and a portfolio under her arm. Over the years, that fire dimmed. It didn't go out, but it became a small, controlled pilot light. I spent my life loving the version of her that served my life. I loved the mother of my children. I loved the hostess of my dinner parties. I loved the woman who kept my home. But I regret that I never truly got to know the artist. I never got to know the woman she would have been if I hadn't been so large in the room. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I remember a dinner party in the 70s. One of my colleagues asked Eleanor what she did with her time. She started to talk about a painting she had seen at the museum, her eyes lighting up. I interrupted her to tell a joke about my boss. The table laughed at my joke. Eleanor went quiet and started clearing the plates. At the time, I thought I was being the life of the party. Now, I see that I was a thief. I stole her moment, I stole her voice. And the worst part is, I didn't even know I was doing it. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I sit in my chair now, and I have so many questions I want to ask her. What did you think about when you were alone? Did you hate the house in the suburbs? What did you see when you looked at a blank piece of paper? But the chair across from me is empty. The regret is a cold companion. I spent 68 years talking to her, but very little time talking with her. I treated our marriage like a partnership, where I was the CEO and she was the staff. I missed the chance to be her best friend. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. When you're 95, the things you thought were important, the promotions, the bigger house, the status, they all look like cheap trinkets. The only thing that has real value is the depth of your connection with the people you love. I realize now that our connection was wide, but it wasn't deep. It was built on the surface of our lives. I regret that I was too arrogant to realize that my wife had a whole inner world that I was never invited into, mostly because I never knocked on the door. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I see young men today, and I want to grab them by the shoulders. I want to tell them, your wife is not a background character in your story. She is the lead in her own. Don't just provide for her. Encourage her. Don't just protect her. Listen to her. If she has a dream, carry it with her. Don't let her bury it in the back of a closet to make room for your ego. Because one day, you will be 95, and the house will be quiet, and you will give anything to hear her talk about her dreams just one more time. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. We always said we would travel when I retired. Someday, Ellie, I'll take you to Florence to see the galleries, I'd say. But when retirement came, I was tired. I wanted to play golf. I wanted to sit on the porch. I kept pushing someday further down the road until the road ran out. We never went to Florence. She never got to see the masterpieces that she spent her life dreaming about. I regret that I assumed her patience was infinite. I assumed we had forever, but forever is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid doing the hard work of loving someone today. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I found her journals too. Just small notebooks hidden in her bedside table. Most of it was mundane grocery lists, kids' schedules. But every few pages, there was a poem. They were poems about loneliness. They were poems about the feeling of being invisible in a crowded room. I read those words, and I wept. I was right there in the room with her, but I was miles away. I was the person she was lonely with. That is a hard truth to swallow at the end of your life. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. Eleanor was a beautiful woman, even in her old age, but I realized I stopped looking at her. I looked past her. I looked at the dinner she made. I looked at the shirt she ironed. I looked at the way she managed our lives. I regret that I stopped seeing the light in her eyes. I stopped noticing the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. I took her presence for granted, like the air I breathe. You don't notice the air until the room goes thin and you're gasping for breath. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. A few weeks before she died, she gave me a small framed sketch. It was a drawing of me, but I didn't look like an old man. I looked like the boy she met in 1948. She saw the best in me until her very last breath. She chose to focus on my potential, while I focused on her utility. That is the ultimate regret. To realize that you were loved far better than you loved in return. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I still wear my wedding ring. It's loose on my finger now. Every time it slides, it reminds me of the promise I made, to love and to cherish. I did the loving part, I think, but I failed at the cherishing. To cherish someone is to protect their soul, not just their body. It is to nurture their dreams, not just their children. I regret that I didn't cherish Eleanor's spirit. I let it shrink to fit the life I had designed for us. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I eat my meals alone now. I spend a lot of time looking at her empty chair. I find myself talking to it. I apologize to the air. I say, "I'm sorry, Ellie. I'm sorry I didn't see you." I wonder if she hears me. I wonder if, wherever she is finally painting. I hope the colors there are brighter than the ones she had here. I hope she has a canvas as big as the sky. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. If I could do it again, I would be smaller. I would listen more and talk less. I would ask her what made her heart beat faster, and I would make sure she had the time and the space to chase it. I would realize that a successful marriage isn't about two people becoming one. It's about two people helping each other become the best versions of themselves. I was so busy becoming me that I forgot to let her become her. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. I hate the word fine now. Whenever my daughter calls and says she's fine, I stop her. I say, "No, tell me the truth. How is your soul?" She thinks I'm just getting old and eccentric. Maybe I am. But I'm trying to make sure she doesn't end up like her mother, a woman with a leather portfolio of dreams hidden under a pile of coats. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. The sun is coming up over the garden. It's a beautiful morning. I can see the roses she planted years ago. They are still blooming. They are her legacy. I've decided to take her portfolio to the local gallery tomorrow. I'm going to show them her work. It's 70 years too late for her to see it on a wall, but maybe it's not too late for the world to see who she really was. It's the last thing I can do for her. I'm 95, and I regret this one thing about my wife. My name is Samuel. I have lived a long life, and I have learned a hard truth. Love is not about the years. It's about the attention. Don't wait until the house is quiet to realize that the person sitting next to you is a masterpiece. Look at them. Really look at them. And don't ever let them be fine.